Welcome, everyone, to DEI After 5, the show that focuses on topics across diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Here's your hostess, inclusive culture curator and coach, Sasha Thompson.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. Okay, so if you've been listening and been watching for the last few weeks, months, however long, you know that there has been conversation about this attack on DEI, or companies getting rid of or cutting back their DEI efforts. But as you know, if you've been listening to me, this work will continue to move forward. And so we're looking at different ways to do that. And today's episode is going to continue that conversation. And so my guest today is Bala Muthiah, who is the head of engineering for a very large tech company, and who's been doing this work as a leader within the organization for a long time. And so Bala, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So for folks who may not know who you are, can you give us a little bit of your story? Tell us how you got into doing this as a leader in tech.
Definitely. My name is Bala. I am part of the tech industry within the Silicon Valley. I am from India. I came here in 2009 and been in the tech industry for almost 15 years now after coming here. The whole topic of DEI has been close to my heart even back in India. Then coming here, I took that, and then in Silicon Valley is the best place for seeing such a diverse talent. And when you see organizations investing and developing skills and muscles around DEI, it was like really a pleasant experience. And then through the time, you see these things getting changed. And my quest now is, how do we keep this going regardless of the political and other environments?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's interesting because when I first spoke to you and we were talking about, your experiences in Silicon Valley and the fact that you're head of engineering, I worked for a small tech startup for several years. And it was our head of engineering as well that kind of led the charge in so many ways, and being very intentional of the work that his team was doing and how he was looking at DEI. So it's very heartwarming for me to hear that, because on the flip side, you hear how engineering is so homogenous, and it can be less than inviting for many people if you are in that space, especially if you're going to conferences or you're the only on your team. So to hear that you are doing this, it's just heartwarming, because I think that more leaders need to do it. So I want to talk a bit about how I started at the top with, there's so many organizations, especially tech companies, that are now starting to back away from some of the promises that they made in 2020. They're starting to pull resources away, but the work needs to continue happening, and it's falling into the laps of leaders, right? And so what are some of the things that leaders, regardless of what department they're in, can start to think about as they're trying to continue the DEI work as a part of their mission?
Great. Great question. It's very true and very timely for now. And engineering, as you mentioned, has always been very homogeneous because it started like that. You had to be in the privileged zone even to get into engineering. So that is where the roots are, and that is why it became very homogeneous. Being an immigrant coming to a new country, it is very evident from the get-go that this is not a very rosy space. This is going to be challenges and stuff. And then when you get into organizations which are very good and intentional about building these things, they have departments and orgs within the company to run this. One thing that really resonated with me was, these are good to have as dedicated organizations, but the work doesn't end there. These are just, I see it as reminders for us to continue to invest regularly. So these departments are more like, I see them as consultants, or being there to remind us to do these things. But within your own team, within your own org, you as a leader or even as a member, you are responsible for driving these continuously, because that is more organic. It is like going to gym every day. You can go to the doctor, like doctor office is more like DEI office. But going to gym and having a healthy lifestyle, that is something you have to do day to day. So that is how DEI is as well. Something people in the team, leaders in the team do day to day from grassroots. And that is the only way to thrive and survive, regardless of macro changes that could happen.
Yeah. I love that analogy of the doctor, right? Because the doctor will tell you, okay, these are the medications that I think you need to take. This is the lifestyle shift that you may need to take. But in order for you to become healthy, you actually have to do the things that the doctor recommends,
True.
right?
True.
And so it is really a guidepost, or just kind of helping you do the things that you really should be doing, or you can even be creative. I know some people, have experienced a lack of diversity and inclusion in their teams. And so they come up with creative ways to address it that may not have come from their DEI office, but would be absolutely supported by that office. And so I love that analogy, because you are truly responsible for what happens with your team.
True.
And ensuring that the tenets of DEI are continuously moving forward on a regular basis, and not just the checkbox one-off training here and there. All right. So, one of the things that you and I talked about was leaders developing talent, right? So, we often hear in some of the challenges to what's happening in DEI is, it's all focused on recruiting. And then once you kind of get people in the door, again, a checkbox that we've done our job.
Yes.
But you really have to develop that talent. And so how do you start to do that, right? When someone new who may be different than the rest of your team is now a part of your team?
Yeah, no, that is a great question, and also a great point you called out right there. It is not done after recruiting, right? Recruiting is, I would say, an easy way for us to think about getting in more diverse talent into the company, into the team. But the real magic happens once they are in. And another big thing companies do is hiring leadership with the diverse, I would say, talent spectrum. And there are, in some states, there are laws which mandates these, like you have to have a certain percentage in the board, for instance, in California, things like that. But to me, that is too late in the game. If you're only looking at leaders to be diverse, it is too late in the game. It is good to have it as a North Star. Like, it is good to have that leader to be the lighthouse for other people. But the real work happens from the ground, meaning when you start looking at early and young talent, that is where the funnel is too big, and that is where you have a great opportunity to bring that talent. And when we think about diversity, we are looking at demographic or certain specific profiles or certain specific backgrounds. Like, we are very limited to think these things because, again, having a DA org will give you a checklist. A HR org might give you a checklist to go follow. That may not really cut it. So as a leader, you need to think about what really diversity means. Do not just focus on either gender or one, like, go broad, go deep, and go early. So these are the three things that will help you build the pipeline, and you can grow your leaders through that. If you start right at the base, you have a good pool, and invest in growing them. Don't look to hire leaders from outside who are diverse. Instead, focus on what is your talent pool today and build them so they become the leaders and they become the diverse bench that you want.
I love that. For so many organizations, right? The default is to look outside of the organization. But by really focusing in on and nurturing the talent that you have, now you have folks that have longevity within the organization. They know the organization. The ramp up is much smaller because they're not in that honeymoon phase, anymore. They know what it takes. They know the culture. And I think so many organizations miss out on nurturing that talent in that way, because the cost of hiring outside the organization is high, right? So again, if you're looking at saving budget, who do we have within our organization that has the skill set, that is doing well, that I don't even want to say has shown us that they can do it, but has the
Mhm.
potential? Because not everyone has the opportunity, but almost everyone has potential. And so how do you start to shift and shape that? So I love that. Um, how does this then work when you're talking about, so now you have someone on your team, you've been working with them. How does that work with the performance management, right? What does that look like? Especially for folks that may come from a different background, right? May have a different set of skills. Because I have found, especially in tech, there's no gray. It's very black and white. Have you done this, and this? But you have people that may come in with different skill sets, or may have come in from a different industry, that are doing the job. And so it's somewhat unfair to rank them on that same criteria when they may bring so much more to the team. And so how do you balance all of that, when you're talking about performance management?
Yeah, true. Performance management is a great lever that any company or a team or a leader has. And this is not new. This skill that you're talking about now, where how do we not just treat all as same, is not new to tech. For instance, any tech company, they call about how focused they are on customers. They don't treat all the customers the same, right? Take a phone company, for example. They know there are different types of users for their phone, and they build their products to serve everybody. It is kind of built in a way that it will go and meet them where they are. So they already have the muscle and the expertise to do this. They don't treat every single customer as the same customer. In fact, there are exercises within any tech company where we talk about personas. We define these users as personas and talk about their background, give them a story. So when you are building things, you empathize with them. But when it comes to performance management, we don't diligently do that exercise, right? We treat every employee as the same and give them the same set of resources or trainings, and then we expect them to perform at a certain level. But then you have to understand people coming from diverse backgrounds, coming from various walks of life, might need different skills to be given to them, might need different resources to be given to them. If we apply the same lens what we do to our customers, to bring it to our team members, and understand what someone is good at, what someone is not good at, and tailor those things, this will make a huge difference. That is where equity comes into play. It's not leveling the playing field, it is more than that. It's bringing
Yeah.
people all to the same area. This is why I strongly believe managers play a great role in this. Like, you could have a centrally funded DEI group, but what they can do versus what a manager taking 5% of their time to do would make a drastic difference in this.
Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 yes. A million yeses. The marketer in me was just like, yes, personas. Yes. Because that's so very true. Engineers, marketers, we think about who is our customer? What are we trying to communicate to them? What do we want them to do? Right. And so flipping that internally, I think, is brilliant, because we don't do that. And it makes me think through, like, okay, well, who sets up those processes? That would be HR, right? And so again, in a way of trying to be fair and equitable, we're talking about equity versus equality. You have to
Yes.
give people what they need in order to be successful. And so that's going to look differently. And so performance management, to your point, should look different, because people are not coming in with the same experiences or skills. And so I think that was just absolutely brilliant, because it's that aha moment that I think many people that are listening may have, like, oh, how can we now look at this in a different way? I love personas, because I always named my personas.
True. Yes.
Because you get to know them, right? And so
Yeah,
you
you
can be
connect
very
with them.
targeted and specific with that. And you talked about grassroots activities. Talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like as a leader, because, I've been in those organizations. Like I said, I was in a tech company where our engineering department led a lot of the work. I was in marketing, but I was doing some of that grassroots stuff. And so talk to me about what that looks like as a leader and how you can support some of those grassroots efforts.
Got it. Great question. One simple thing to remember is anything that comes from somebody else is always going to look like work to you. If you believe in something, it doesn't seem to be a heavy thing to you. It will look like, oh, I want to do this, right? So that is the mindset or culture we want to build.
Mm-hmm.
So what it looks like is for a leader or a manager who's at the first level, they have to bring the group together and talk about it. It is not a compliance training or a lesson or an online course that you take, but it is about those organic conversations that happens during your lunch, a conversation that happens during your coffee chat. Nowadays things are remote, so you can intentionally plant those meetings. You can bring in some circles, like make it a lunch and learn circle, have open the doors and have people talk about their stories, have people talk about their experiences outside and within. That connects people. In this remote world, we come together a lot for meetings, but we come together only for work. We come in, talk about a project, talk about a milestone, get out of that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really help these moments. So create those organic, casual chats. That's where things would spark, and use that as a channel, as a medium. You are a leader, and these mediums are great for you to be vulnerable, to show what these can be done, and give voice to people across. And that's one great way to do. And find out people who are really interested in leading these things. Usually, again, this is a double-edged sword too. Most of the times we look at the minorities or the target group people to go drive these things, which is necessarily not a great idea. If you look at all the DEI heads, and there are certain profile personas the industry has, there's a stereotype. We put the burden of uplifting the group to the group itself. That is the really, I would say, anti-pattern we want to break. That's why every leader plays a role. Like, you start these conversations inorganically. Do not label it. Do not say this is a DEI meeting, this is a improvement meeting, but make it organic. Open up circles where people candidly share, and then you come out with outcomes.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back to, being in that organization, and we had a Slack channel, kind of an internal Slack channel that was around DEI, or I think it was like a diversity channel or something. And what ended up happening was we started seeing some of our leaders having conversation in that group. And it wasn't to monitor the group, but it was dropping articles that may be helpful, or sharing an experience or a conference. And it was coming from the leaders. And so one particular leader. And so that just kind of opened this door of, one, this isn't getting shut down, right? Like, this is a senior leader that's having these conversations and leaning into his curiosity. But two, it gave me the courage, because at the time, well, I'll say this, I was the first Black female hired by that organization. And by this time, I think there may have been 4. And so, but it gave me the courage to step to this leader and say, hey, I think there's something here. Would you be able to help support it? Right. And even though he wasn't a formal champion, he truly was like one of our first kind of advisors and champions in that space. And, as what you're saying, it really is important to make sure that these spaces aren't, again, checking a box, right? They aren't a diversity conversation. It really was, how do we continue to encourage people to be curious in this space? How can we learn from each other? And he was also very mindful of, I don't want to put the burden on you to do all of this, right? And so it was just one of the best conversations and continued conversations that I ever had with this leader, because it was grassroots, but it also felt as if it was genuine, and it wasn't just to check a box to say, oh, we did this thing over here, and so now we don't have to feel like we're out of compliance, or, it just didn't feel like it was a legal thing. So I love, the examples that you shared, because it is so important that leaders do this with an authenticity, with a curiosity, but with no intentions to make it a formal thing to start. Right.
True, very true.
Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about some other ways, some unconventional ways of skill building, because we talked about, like the performance piece of it, and leaders kind of stepping in with the grassroots, and even that shows some leadership skills, right? If someone is stepping into those grassroots efforts. So talk to me about, some of those other unconventional ways that folks can build skills as they're doing this work.
True. There are a couple of things that comes to my mind, right? One is within the company, what you can do. Pretty much every product or every company is there for a purpose, right? You have to add value to a customer. You are trying to change someone's lives for the better. So that is a great area to go understand, like talking to your customers, like different customers that you might have. That itself is a great way to bring in diverse opinions. Will expose the team members within your organization to go and learn firsthand from the customers and create empathy. And that's a great skill building, because at that point, you're not only imprinting why the company exists, the purpose of the company, by listening to customers, but also putting the person who is listening in charge, right? They go to the customer, they represent the company, they go and have these conversations, they completely understand and internalize. Most of the companies have a certain dedicated roles, like you have a product role, you have a business role, and then you have engineers. But when it comes to specifically, because we are talking about engineering organizations, take those engineers and put them in front of customers to go understand what the customers want, what their pain points are, and they will become innovators. Today, everyone has a phone, everyone has an app. And when you use those apps, you have ideas. Oh, I wish this button was here. Oh, I wish it was so easy to export or copy or do something. So internally, you are a product manager at that point. You are thinking about how I wish this product behaves. It could be your Gmail app, it could be your camera on your phone. You have ideas. But then when you go to work, you think about only engineering and only solving the problem from a code perspective or whatever field that is. But going in front of customers, being that customer facing, would give you that first sense. So that's one way to do. The second way is like outside of your company, right? This is where community comes into picture. There are like so many opportunities for a company to go and create impact in terms of volunteering or like mentoring, like going and bringing up talent from schools and colleges and teaching those kids. That is a great way, because you build your leadership skills, you build your empathy, you build your organizational skills. And those are the skills that you need to be successful within a company. And again, not everyone will have an opportunity to grow in the same way. So how, as a leader, you can get them opportunities outside of your projects. In a given project, there could be only one lead. Say you have a team of 5 people, not all the 5 can lead the project. Only one can lead the project. So how can you give equal skills to the 4 other people who are at the same level? Like, these are various opportunities. One can drive customer conversations. One can drive some other risk conversations. So think about ways where you add value to the business, but at the same time, get the skills given to your team.
Yeah. I love that. I keep saying I love that because it's so true. And it's the stereotype that engineers are, introverts and want to stay in their hole and all, just want to be on their computers, is so not true. And I've worked for several tech companies, and some of the most impactful engineers that I've met have been the ones that, so I'll say this, I was in field marketing, right? So the ones that I would bring to a conference or say, hey, we have this program that's happening in the community, can you come out? And to watch their wheels turn in their heads of, oh, okay, I can solve this problem. Or if we do this, we can offer, like, it expands so much of what they can do in their problem solving, but then also the people skills, right? So there's that empathy and getting to know and understand some of the problems and challenges. You know, when I was at the last company that I worked for, we supported a program that brought members of the LGBTQ plus community together with healthcare folks. And then we brought in engineers, and we started to talk about some of the challenges that the LGBTQ plus community has in healthcare, and broke them off into groups. And they came up with some amazing solutions, you know, from apps to using AI to help answer questions in certain ways. But it was the creativity and having those that are the most impacted at the table with them and part of those conversations. And then having the healthcare providers also talking about, you know, here's some of the challenges that we're seeing as well. And so it was just a fascinating thing to be a part of and to watch, because they weren't always given that opportunity to be creative in that way. And many of the engineers are like, okay, I don't even know how we're going to help, because we, you know,
Yes.
we don't even know. And so giving them the time and space to be able to do that. I think every single person that was there walked away just so impacted and so optimistic about what you can do to help certain communities in areas that are very detrimental to them and their being. So I absolutely love, you know, you talking about it in that way. You know, if there were two things that you would recommend for leaders to start thinking about right now that they can do, what would those two things be?
Okay. The first one I would say is, as a leader, like, the buck stops at you, right? You have all the control for your team, and create opportunities where it is not always a project where someone has to come in and work to gain the skills. What other problems that you see within the company that you can solve with your team? It could be a process change. It could be something to do with culture, or it could be something to do with how things are being done, execution. So find opportunities for your talent within the team where they can go and contribute and shine. So it is not always that one great project that has to come to get someone promoted or move someone up the ladder. So look for other opportunities which you can give it to your team, and everyone gets the skills that you need to develop that leadership pipeline. The second thing is, this is going to be a little bit controversial, but in a way,
I love
it
it. Go ahead,
is
go for it.
okay for the DEI office to not exist. Because if you take any company, like any company with great culture, and ask yourself, is there a central culture office that is trying to build the culture? No. Culture is part of the company, is built by the people, by the leaders. So it is okay if the DEI office doesn't exist. You bring the DEI from your team, right? Similar to culture. Think of DEI as a culture equivalent. So you don't need a culture officer to come and tell you what to do, to how to build a culture, right? You as a leader bring the culture. You as a team member bring the culture. So same way, apply that lens always to your DEI space.
So that's not controversial at all.
Right?
Not to me, you know, because, you know, I truly believe that DEI needs to be part of your company's DNA, right? Like
Yes.
it should be permeated throughout your organization. And so perfect example of your culture, that is what people experience every single day. And so how do you ensure that it's the culture that you say that you want to have, right? There are ways that you hold people accountable in that as well, right? That's not who we are. That's not our culture.
True.
Those aren't our values. Anyone in the organization can talk to those things. And so applying that same lens to DEI, like what are the behaviors that we want to see? How are we holding people accountable when they run counter to those values and beliefs? And what does progress look like? You know, how does that look as well? And so I appreciate you saying that that's going to be controversial. It isn't. It isn't.
Right.
But because I think that's the direction that we really need to go into. And it ties back to what you said earlier of having someone in a DEI role more as a consultant than someone that, okay, is pulling all of the strings. Because if you have that person, then no one's going to feel that they're responsible for it. And
Totally.
so making sure that that responsibility is a shared responsibility, that there is, if there's a question, there's someone that you can ask question of and get counsel, but they're not dictating or mandating what happens. So I'm right
Totally.
there with you in that controversy. So Bala, tell me, like, what are the things that you do to take care of yourself? Like, how do you fill your cup when you are, managing all of these, different projects with your teams and helping them to uplift themselves? Like, how are you doing that for yourself?
Yeah, I think I would say two things. One is I talk to people. Like that is my energy thing. If like after a long day, like I call my friends, talk to the people in your life, just talk to them about random stuff. That gives me energy. That gives me, I would say, inspirations. So talking to people gives me a lot of energy. The next one is walk. Like walking is the next thing. So talk and walk are two things I try to do to keep my mind sane. In the digital world, I think everyone is in expected a lot. Like companies or like individually, we all have high bars for ourselves these days. We all have this innate thing of growing and like driving and thriving. It is good to have those things. That is how humanity has evolved over the time. If we were lethargic, we would not have been a multi-cell organisms. So if we grew from single cell, it is okay. But in the digital age, it's really hard because it takes a toll. You cannot close your laptop at 5 and switch out of your work like our parents
Yeah,
and grandparents used to do. So we bring work home. We take work home to work. It happens. So walking and talking are two things that I do to preserve my mental space and health.
I love that. Yes, yes. Two very attainable things,
Yes.
right, for folks.
No membership required.
No membership required. I love that. Love it. Love it. All right. So, Bala, for folks that may want to reach out to you or connect with you, how can they do that?
Great. Balamuthiah.com. That's my personal blog. And I try to write as much as I can, but it's not that easy, but I'm still keeping my goal up. But that's the best place. There's contact information, LinkedIn. I would love to chat. I always, like I said, I like to talk to people. I'd love to connect with new people because that sparks chemicals in your brain. And I am addicted to that dopamine. So always love to talk to new people.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully this conversation gave you that dopamine rush for the day.
100%.
Well, thank you so much, Bala, for being with us and sharing your nuggets of knowledge in this space. I think it's so important that as leaders continue to figure out what's happening within DEI, these are some very actionable things that they can do starting today and continuing this work forward. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Shasha. And what you are doing, what your platform is doing is amazing. It is like a reminder for all of us consistently to go do and believe in ourselves that we can make a difference.
Yeah.
Again, the whole topic of DEI after 5 is like, like a wonderful reminder. I would like to print as a poster on everyone's wall and keep it because it is not just a structure or a team. It is everyone and you can do it everywhere.
I love that. Oh, see, my marketing ideas just went off. Okay. We'll get some posters.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of DEI After 5. Hopefully you were able to walk away with a couple of nuggets that you can start to implement today. As always, you can find us here every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform. Just tune in and be able to be sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.